So, all right, we're now officially underway. Well, welcome everyone to the very first of our ARCAS Conversations series, the first, but hopefully first of many. And today we are very lucky to be having the topic spotlight on archaeobotany, and we have three wonderful archaeobotanists joining us from all over the place. So that's really wonderful. And I'll let them introduce themselves and their topic. But I just wanted to briefly sort of reintroduce, if you're not aware, what ARCAS is. So we are the Australasian Research Cluster for Archaeological Science. And ARCAS has been around for a while, but sort of has gone through ups and downs of sort of how much work and activity is going into it. And we're sort of part of the latest round of efforts to sort of get the organization cluster back sort of up and running and having a few new things and get new people in, and particularly trying to focus on our Australasian approach, so getting in more people from outside of Australia and things like that. So these conversation seminars are one of the ways that we're hoping to achieve that. So if you are interested in the ARCAS, please go to the website. Also, hopefully that will be seeing some updates soon as well. But also, this is a great place to ask some questions about that more generally to our participants and things at the end of the seminar as well. So, welcome to ARCAS Conversations. Happy National Archaeology Week, everybody. And I will now hand you all over to our wonderful participants, who I will quickly remind to please turn off their turn their microphones on, so that they can all be heard. Thank you and welcome to the seminar.
That's great. Thank you so much, Shimona. Can everyone hear me okay? All good. So as Shimona said, we're here for ARCAS, and I just wanted to add one quick thing to that, is that if you get along now, membership is currently free still. So we're looking at, changing things, but at the minute, now would be the time to join. So just a little recommendation there. Especially for students. So I'm going to start by attempting to, of course, share my screen, which will no doubt encounter issues, but hopefully it's smooth enough. So I'm just going to press on this button. Okay, hopefully that works.
Yes.
For everybody back there. So Borlu-based speakers. So I believe that Emilie is currently in Borlu at home, if I recognize that space.
Yes.
So from us, and also noting that people are joining from different lands and different countries across Australia and different countries outside of Australia. We just want to pay our respects to the Whadjuk Noongar First Nations people as the traditional owners of the land here. The Whadjuk Noongar remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge the strength of their culture and offer our respects to elders. We also acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and that Australia always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So with that, as Shimona mentioned, we're here putting a spotlight on archaeobotany. And the first thing we're going to do as speakers is introduce ourselves. So I'm going to start that process. My name is India Ella Dilkes-Hall. I'm white Australian. I hail from research at University of Western Australia. So undergrad, honours, PhD, all of them at that one university. I have done a couple of postdocs, currently a research fellow at Griffith University and an adjunct still at UWA. And I specialise in a specialist arm of archaeobotany. So I specialise in carpology, which is the fruits and the nuts and the seeds that come out of archaeological sites. So on this slide is a range of things. I submitted my PhD in April 2020. So that was the first submission for UWA to come in the post, thanks to COVID. there's a few of me in the field doing various silly things, some of my paper titles, but realistically, my research encompasses a lot of plant processing and working here in Australia. I work with senior women traditional owners primarily and do a range of experimental things to try and observe better what we see in the archaeobotanical records. So post PhD, I then shifted tacks and have been working in Kalimantan in Borneo, in East Kalimantan specifically, and that research has, yeah, taken a different track from Australian. But soon enough, I think I'll be working back in Australia. I would hope in the future. So the next speaker that's going to introduce themselves is Alifah, if that's okay, to turn on your microphone.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing as well. So, okay. I think you're safe to share your screen as well, Alifah.
Okay, thank you, India. Let me yeah, first of all, I would like to couple thanks to India Ella and also Shimona Kealy, who invite me to join with the first ARCAS online seminar. And I think this is a good opportunity for us together to share each other about the research result, the new method or something else. And I think it is also the thing for us to make the collaboration work at these regions. And may I share my slide? Okay. Yeah. Okay, let me introduce. My name is Alifah. I am a prehistorian research at the Research Center for Archaeometry, part of the National Research and Innovation Agency. And I work at the cave site in Indonesian island, especially in the small islands surrounding the Java Island, like Madura, Kangean, Sapeken, and else, and also at the small island surrounding the Nusa Tenggara and surrounding the Papua. Uh, I am also a doctoral student at the Faculty of Gajah Mada Faculty of Social Sciences, Gajah Mada University, and my thesis focus on uncover about the early occupation at the Kangean Island during the prehistoric time. I first learned about archaeobotany in 2015 when I was a master student at Department Archaeology at Gajah Mada University. And at that time, I was involved the Mahirta and Prof. Su O'Connor project, and also with Shimona Kealy on Kisar Island. And I was working on uncovering the land use at this cave, namely Here Sorot Intapa in Kisar. And I use phytolith and start from the sediment and artifact residues as a data. However, I stopped doing archaeobotanical research after that and just only really resuming after I was joined at the Research Center for Archaeometry in 2022. My archaeobotanical research primarily utilize microbotanical data, particularly phytolith, start and diatom. I choose microbotanical data because my work location is in a tropical region. So the macrobotanical remain, especially in the prehistoric context, was very difficult to finding. It's happened because the massive of decomposition process. So sometimes the macrobotanical remain that we found was in the fragile and fragmented condition. So I prefer microbotanical data, especially organic data, as one solution. Some of my archaeobotanical research has focused on uncovering the plant utilization, plant translocation, and also the indication of plant domestication in cave sites context. And currently, me and my teams uh, developing a more efficient uh, preparation method based on the sample condition and availability of the preparation tool and availability of the chemist. And we are also developing a database for reference phytolith and start from native plant that we collect from several environments surrounding the archaeological site we are working. And we do all this because the existing reference sometimes come from plant that originate from different my environment. So as a country with a high biodiversity, we need to start compiling reference from the native plant that may not be found elsewhere. And over the past few years, my team also trying to record the development of archaeobotanical research in Indonesia, the trend in reveal, the data use, and the analytical method used. And we hope that from the data, we can fill the gap existing research. And also from the data, we also know that over past 10 years, the archaeobotanical research conducted by the Indonesian researcher has increased. So I believe that this presents a good opportunity for archaeobotany in Indonesia to continue developing. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Alifah. That was wonderful. Far exceeding my own introduction there. And now Emilie has to follow that.
I know.
I'll hand over
you.
the floor.
Well, thank you also to Shimona and India for inviting me. And I'm very happy to also meet Alifah through this opportunity. So that's great. So I have 2 little slides because I'm, me, India. So I'm going to share my screen. Share here. And yep. Is that going to work? Just because I wanted one slide showing how beautiful charcoal is. So this is just pictures of wood charcoal under different types of microscope for you to see how beautiful it is. And there's a whole range of different things because that's what I do. I do wood charcoal as a specific field of archaeobotany. And my favorite one is the bamboo that you can see on the bottom right here because it looks like a butterfly, but it's actually vessels and fibers and parenchyma. So I really like that. But who am I? So I'm Emilie Dotte-Sarout, originally from New Caledonia, which is the little island that you probably don't see in the middle of the Pacific there, which is where I first then took a plane to go to France to start studies at Montpellier University in the south. And at the time, I didn't know that's actually one of the big centers of wood charcoal analysis, which is called anthropology. But I didn't know that. I was studying history and cultural anthropology. And then I took the plane again and went to the US, as you can see on the map there, for an exchange year in Minnesota, because I thought that was very exotic for me. coming from a tropical island to be in an area where it's minus 30 degrees in winter. And that was cool, but just for 1 year. And that's also when I decided I actually wanted to be an archaeologist. So then I came back to Paris to study at the Sorbonne and do environmental archaeology. First, I did GIS, and then I discovered archaeobotany and did my PhD at the Sorbonne in archaeobotany and wood charcoal in collaboration with the ANU in Canberra. Because I wanted to apply wood charcoal analysis to Pacific Islands, and Pacific archaeology is really big at the ANU. And then I came to live in Perth, not at all for scientific reason, just for personal reason, but then I kind of inserted myself in the department there. And today I'm very happy that I have an archaeobotany lab that was created at UWA, and we've had a number of students and nice projects. And so you can see me in the lab, in the field, doing all of my favorite things and working on different projects in Australia. So you can see some nice logos from Desert to Sea, and also another project I'm working with colleagues from Flinders and Mara Country Rangers. And I think I probably have something here. Also very excited that I now have a future fellowship for the next 5 years. This is going to be allowing me to do a lot more microscope work and finally identify all these boxes of charcoal that have been looking at me very sadly from my office for the past 5 or maybe even more sometimes years. So that's cool. And with that, we're also going to have new students coming in, 2 PhD students actually starting in the next few months to work with me on applying anthropology in Australia. So it's all very exciting. And I don't know if I said everything I was supposed to say, that I'm based at UWA. Yes, I said that. Oh, yes, maybe I also just want to say that because archaeobotany is wonderful, but it's still a bit under-recognized in Australia and the region, it's difficult to find a job as an archaeobotanist. So I also use my other kind of skills, which is more in cultural anthropology and history. And I did a postdoc on the history of archaeology at the ANU, and then another postdoc, because that's how life is, where I was very lucky to be joined by India, who worked with me on the history of women in archaeology. And so I think that's maybe what I've got. You know, I've always have too many things on my slides. That's another point of discussion. But yes, I worked on the history of archaeology in the Pacific Islands, and it ended officially last year, this project. But this year is when one of the very important output for me personally was finally put in place, which was an exhibition about the specific role of indigenous Kanak field workers and the only woman who spoke French and was part of the very first team excavating professionally in archaeology in 1952. And so I've also done all this work in the history of archaeology, which I believe has given me a very special perspective on our field as well. And yes, just to finish, I'm going back to this picture of my 2 kids because they have been my carry-on luggages on a number of trips for conferences and field trips. And being a mom in the field of archaeology has also impacted the way that I see the field. So it's also part of who I am. And that's me.
That was great. Thank you, Em. So I guess realistically, we've got 3 researchers together here, 3 archaeobotanists at different stages of their careers, that have worked in different parts of the world, have had different research trajectories. So I think that is one of the important parts of this spotlight. So I'm going to ask Alifah and Em to turn their mics on, because we're just going to take it into more of a conversational style webinar where I'm just going to start sort of throwing out questions realistically. And one of them actually is sort of, I'd like to discuss a little bit around different universities. So we've all been at different universities and the prerequisites of sort of being recognized as an archaeobotanist. Is there anything you can say to that?
I guess because I was studying my undergrad and then my PhD in France, where there is quite a long and strong tradition of archaeobotany, like in the rest of Europe, not just France. Yes, there is definitely a specific training that you have to undertake to be recognized as an archaeobotanist and to call yourself an archaeobotanist. And so that's only because I did this master in environmental archaeology, where we had specific, like, it was kind of an intensive year with specialization every month, different specialization every month. And one of these one was archaeobotany. And that was the first year. And then you would choose which one you're going to specialize in your second year. And it's really expected of people that they go through this kind of process and then write a thesis, so either a master thesis or a PhD thesis on this topic, but also with a specific mentor who has the knowledge that you can then be recognized as an archaeobotanist, I guess. For me, it was a bit tricky because I had amazing mentor and in anthropology, Stéphanie Thiebaud, was very important, but nobody had been doing that in the Pacific. So I was also doing new things by myself. Basically, I had also to create things myself and see how that adapt in the Pacific region. So I was in between two areas, but I wasn't the first in this because I knew of people who had done the same in South American archaeology, for example. So it's also nice to be surrounded by other people who also are kind of bringing the discipline into a new area, because you're confronted to the same issues.
For sure. Is that similar in Indonesian sort of line of study, Alifah? Would you begin being interested in, say, your undergrad, or is it something more confined to honors and masters?
Yeah, I think in Indonesia maybe a little bit different condition because the Rayman is a the high biodiversity and the condition of the decomposition. So when I was in master and my supervisor introduced me about the microbotanical method to uncover the plant use, I think that it is very important and very interesting because it can be another way to minimize the condition of the uh, our our location. So by microbotanical, we can reveal sometime information that can be found in another approach, macrobotanical approach. So maybe we need more multi approaches in Indonesian archaeobotanical than the area with the good preservation of the botanical. So I think collaboration to more information about the reference because we just have an organic and microbotanical remain. It is very important to completing each other in area because especially Australia and Indonesia have a connecting locate area like the same place as Sahulen, and we have a similar issue about the human dispersal. So it is very helpful if we have a sharing about the archaeobotanical information about the Australia, Indonesia, and other places. I think it's
Absolutely. Do you think, because there is a pretty extensive history of microbotanical focus in Indonesia. And I mean, yes, there is the preservational problem sort of across the tropics, but what do you think has sort of driven that beyond sort of preservation differences? Because I mean, I've worked in sites in Indonesia where macrobotanicals certain, we know that they do exist in certain sites. But somewhere like I was saying in Kalimantan, the entirety of Borneo has never had a wood charcoal analysis. It's never had an anthropological analysis. And then the carpological work that I'm doing is really the only thing outside of sort of Victor Paz's research and everything that's not in Indonesia and Borneo, effectively. So yeah, can you speak to anything on that?
Yes, maybe in Borneo, especially in open set, maybe the macrobotanical can be more decomposite. Then cave site, especially in my case, when we have doing excavation in the cave site with the concretion condition, it is hard to find the archaeobotanical in the macro remain. So we can understand about the plant use and how the plant remaining by the macrobotanical. So with this condition, we just can refill by the unorganic because the decomposition make uh, the organic disappear, just release the unorganic material. So maybe we need to choose the good method and the good sample to know to get the information about the plant in this condition. I think it's...
Can I say something, India, about that?
Yeah, of course, of course.
I wonder if there was not also the impact of, I think in Southeast Asia, there is a very strong tradition of paleo-environmental studies. So not specifically associated to archaeology, which means there was a lot of pollen studies developed very early on. And so branching out of that, starch and phytolith studies and all the other micro-remains, there was already this kind of tradition in place. And archaeobotany is yet another, like macrobotanical remains associated to archaeological site, maybe then has had less of development, and it's more of an afterthought kind of that came later on. So it's something that lagged a little bit behind because of this strong paleo-environmental tradition that already existed.
Absolutely.
I wonder.
Yeah, and I think, there's been great impacts by people like Paperno, Carol Lentfer, like who have really pushed forth, microbotany and have provided incredible resources for researchers to then apply, that type of research to their own sites. So yeah, I find that very interesting, these different sort of paths that nations, have sort of taken just by virtue of their own cultural history, really, in more recent times, is absolutely fascinating as well.
Yeah.
So I think, what have I got here? So one of the questions that actually this came from my 9-year-old nephew, and he asked, Tanamai asked, why is archaeobotany important? So I'll go to you first, Em. Tell us.
So if he speaks to my kids, they're going to tell him that it's just old pieces of burned stuff. So not super exciting.
It's true. I've got some here as well as examples. It really is what it is.
But it's just another type of archaeology, right? So we've got archaeologists looking at tools, stone tools, ceramics, rock art, but everywhere people went, they made fire. And if they made fire, it provides a really good condition for preservation of plant remains. So not just wood, anything else that would have fallen into fire. And as we know, phytolith preserve also really well in ash and this kind of sediments. So, and then we can understand what people were eating, obviously, but also what they were bringing in terms of plant material in the place where they were living. And so we can understand where they were moving in the landscape, which type of vegetation, which part of the environment they were moving in. And that means we can also understand how they were managing and transforming this landscape through the vegetation. So It's one little seed, but a very big tree with lots of different questions that can be explored, basically.
It's true. Do you have anything you would like to add to that, Alifah? Why is archaeobotany important? It's a very existential question.
Yes, I think before I answer your question, I want to just little information about the decomposition. Not only to uncover the plain remain, but we also hard to find the sample to be dated because my decomposition make the organic disappear. So it is hard for us to find the good sample to be dated. So sometimes we have a file to my sample to be dated. Even bone already decomposed, already concretion by the acid. So it is very confused me to get the good sample to be dated. Okay,
Absolutely.
come
That's
back to
true.
your question. I think archaeobotany is very important, and I agree a bit with the Emilie's argue. Sometimes archaeobotany can reveal, can give us about the something predictable. Like the finding at the Niah cave, we can show that the human can adapt it in the rainforest be in the thousand early years ago. So it is truly amazing that we know that in Niah cave dated about 15 years 15,000 years ago that they can adapted the forest rain, the tropical forest rain, and also I think the finding at the quicksand site and the Papua New Guinea can inform us that the cultivate can be rise in the other country, not only just get the introduced by the another place, but they can release the early cultivate before they get the introduced for another society. So I think archaeobotany can give amazing information that can be found with another approaches or another data, I think.
For sure. I completely agree with both of you. Um, I think on a really sort of base level, I just like archaeobotany. I'm an archaeobotanist. I think it's important. Fact. But of course, there is so many layers to what we do. There's so many arms to the discipline as well. There's so much collaborative work to be done. I guess if I had to say something, I think it's really important for proving, not even proving, but providing real-time connection, here in Australia, working with Aboriginal communities and tying the archaeobotany and the archaeological record to practices that are still occurring today is just one of the most incredible things that I can come across in my own research as an archaeobotanist, but then of course as an archaeologist. And I think that that's a really important not underrated, but sort of yes, actually underrated part of what we do, the connection between people and plants and that understanding that we can share with others that, we've always used plants. We're never not part of our history. So they are incredibly important, as Em said, for fire, warmth, all of these things, and because of carpology, food, like plant foods, incredibly important, and technology, as you said, Alifah, people peopled Australia through maritime craft, and that could only have been done with a really incredible knowledge of the types of plants to build boats, and then obviously navigational skills, which go beyond. So I think I'll give a few more and then maybe we throw it out to some of the attendees. If anyone's got any questions, they can either put it through the chat or they can ask it live. So this is a question from my mother. Can archaeobotanical discoveries be controversial?
Yes.
Take it away, Em. What have you got?
Well, the first thing I think about is related to my work in the Pacific Islands, where there is I'm going to try not to be going into too many directions, but there's a long history of racist interpretation of races and the peopling. And so one of these racist theory was that all the Polynesians and the people with a fairer skin color than the Melanesians would have come from South America because they were more civilized, right? So they would have come from South America. And when Europeans arrived in the Pacific Island, they saw that in Papua New Guinea and in almost all of the Pacific Islands, people were cultivating sweet potato, which has been first domesticated in South America. So there is a little bit, well, not so much today, but there has been a little bit of a race to who can identify an archaeological remain of sweet potato. Because you can kind of trace that to relationship between South America and Pacific Islands. And so there was some sweet potato probable remains identified in the Cook Island, for instance, in a period, I think the time when they discovered that it was dated around the 16th century, so before Spanish movement into the Pacific island, just before. And so then if we find probable sweet potato, the archaeobotanists, explain it's potentially sweet potato, but it could be another type of tuber because I'm missing a few elements to make an identification which is really certain to the species level. And then quickly it becomes sweet potato in other archaeologists' discourse, and it becomes sweet potato in the media, and it becomes the proof that people had been coming from South America rather than Polynesian people traveling to South America. And so, yes, they can be controversial because it's a very controversial identification attached to a whole range of other contextual identification, I think. So that's one example.
Absolutely. Do you have perhaps an example of controversy from Indonesian archaeobotany, Alifah?
Yes, as I mentioned before that sometimes archaeobotanical finding make controversies theory like finding at the Lembah Balian. Maybe we can know that the people there already cultivate local taro yam as a main diet from them. And also with the finding at the quick swamp, as we know that the banana introduced in the theory of the Austronesian spread, we just believe that banana introduced by the Austronesian when they spread in the Indonesia into Pacific. But the finding at the quick swamp show us that they can cultivate by themselves before the Austronesian come to this area. So I think it is very controversial finding. And about the misconception about the archaeobotanists too, I think especially in tropical area like Indonesia with the big biodiversity, the error by archaeobotanists certainly exists because the similarity of some plant, maybe it is hard for us to differentiate each other. So sometimes it is make the error in interpretation. So I think it is very important for us to use multi-proxy data to reduce the and to minimize the error. So I think this is a very uh, important finding and sometimes controversial, and sometimes the controversial made by the archaeobotanist self because the condition of the data.
Yeah.
That's right. I think that's a really important point to touch on here, is the sort of grey area around misidentification. I think it absolutely happens. It has happened. It will happen. It will continue to happen. I
Yeah.
think a lot of it can come back to sort of a lack of access to reference collections, or not necessarily having that specific material on hand. Which sort of brings in line as well sort of the accessibility of the data of what we create and have by other researchers. Is that software compatible? Is that something that Alifah and I could share with one another, or is that going to be on a software that's $1,000 and I only have access to it through my uni? So it's I think data sharing comes into this as well, which is something that we're all working with, I know. And also misidentification, I think in my own training and sort of going back through my own history, I did identify some misidentifications at a Carpenter's Gap 1, a site here in the Kimberley in Australia, which was certainly not a controversy in the sense that it wasn't controversial. It just is part of the process in a lot of ways, and often we can be not forced to, but often there can be pressure to assign higher levels of identification than perhaps we're comfortable with, or and that can be top-down pressure, or it can be, your own internal sort of, okay, I really want to speciate this. But I got some really valuable advice from Mark Nesbitt once after a conference that I presented at, and he, because of my conservativeness, if you will, to speciate my ID, and I just sort of left them at SP. He was very thankful and grateful of seeing that. And within that interaction, he said to me, well, we can never truly know because there are plants that are going to be extinct now that we'll never have the reference collection for, and that could look exactly almost very, very similar to that genus. So it was a real learning curve, and it was something that I now I guess I'm even more conservative in a way. And I don't know whether that doesn't really bode well because I think also archaeologists more broadly, or people sort of looking at us to our work as well, they really do expect a laundry list of, family, gene, species, and then all of the digital and raw data that goes with that. But it is incredibly difficult what we do. And I think this sort of comes back to maybe what Em was saying as well, is that, there's a misconception of what we do, and there's half of the people think what we do is just really easy and they could do it themselves, and what we could collect a plant and do all these things, but they don't actually realize how slow science archaeobotanical research is and can be, and especially to sort of check ourselves and check ourselves with one another as well.
Yeah, it's part of one of the issues. It's access to reference collection and reference material, but it's also access to proper training, with mentoring and people who can, help you learn this kind of thing. And I agree with Alifah, like multi-proxy analysis are really the best way to kind of control these different levels of identification, and also the size of assemblages that we can look at. So the larger the assemblage you can look at, the more it's going to help you to pin down your identification. Because if you have a large assemblage, then you can start seeing taxonomic association that are characteristic of specific vegetation units. And that's how that can also support some identification you can probably, maybe propose down to the species level, because the context where the plant is growing. So best kind of assemblages you have, which are large enough, which means you need to do good sampling in the field, which means you need to be working with archaeologists who know how to do that or to talk with them before they go, which means you need good training. It's kind of like
it's a big cycle. Basically, we need to be there.
well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more of us, and yeah, training everybody. Like we all have to
Absolutely.
learn about lithics when we do undergrad in archaeology, and everybody
True.
should learn about archaeobotany as well.
I completely agree with that, Em. Well, I might just ask, well, actually, I might put it to the attendees. Does anyone have a question or would like to ask a question? You could put it in the chat or I don't know, Shimona, whether people can turn their cameras on and ask a question. But if not, I do have backup.
Yeah. So, yeah, please, if you've got a question, just raise your hand and I should be able to see it at my end, I hope. Or alternatively, oh, we've got a question in the chat. So I will read this out. So, Jordana, thank you for your question. The question is, what areas are in demand in archaeobotany, specifically in Southeast Asia? So that's a really good one.
Alifah, would you like to?
Yeah, just hang on. Teman berdian. Sorry, can you help me to the question, Shimona? The
Like,
meaning?
is there any specific specialties, I think, in archaeobotany that are more in demand?
What the specific special?
So, you
Oh,
know how we were talking
yes.
about like micro and macro and all those
Oh,
different
yeah.
ones.
Okay.
I feel like
Yes,
macro.
yes. In Southeast Asia, the area with the tropical region with the high decomposition process, I think microbotany, especially in organic remain, is best data we can found uh, to reveal the plant utilization and how people use plant in their life in the past. But as I mentioned before, to compiling the interpretation, we must use multi data, both in macro and microbotanical. Because if we just use one data, maybe it is a high rise of bias. So the best thing to do, I think, use macro and microbotanical as data that we can get the good information about the plant context.
Yeah, I think actually I have a good example of that. So when I did my PhD, it was the first time that somebody would apply wood charcoal analysis in New Caledonia, and there had been quite a few pollen studies done. And in these pollen studies, there was never any record of the wet forest, the wet rainforest. So there was a lot of signatures of how the lowland forest had changed to open kind of savanna after European, well, not just European actually, after human settlement, and then even more after European settlement. So there was a whole narrative around deforestation, right? And then when I did the wood charcoal analysis, I actually found very good signature for wet rainforests. And for the continuation of some specific type of lowland forest, and also all of the gardened kind of plants and trees. And so it really complicated the story around the deforestation. It was more about a transformation of this. And at the time, I was doing my PhD between the Sorbonne and the ANU, which was a wonderful position to be in. And so at the ANU, I was with Janelle Stevenson and the fantastic Jeff Hope, who had worked in New Caledonia and the Pacific Islands. And he was so excited that there was a signature of wet rainforest. And he told me that's because a lot of the species of trees that are in this type of environment do not produce a lot of pollen. and the pollen also diffusion is very local. So we'll never find any of this in our records. Doesn't mean they didn't exist. And with the wood charcoal, we can now have a better story to tell. So yes, that's a good example, I think, of how having all, these two categories of proxy together then makes it more interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
May I add some information, Shimona and Ella? In my thesis study in Kisar Island, in the campsite we find the seed, and when I bring the seed to the expertise in Gajah Mada University, he said that this seed come from Amorphophallus and also some Colocasia. And then when I was doing identification, the petalite from the sediment, we also found the stud grain from Colocasia and also oxalate and we know that it's just fine at the Amorphophallus and Colocasia phytolith. So it is be compiling from seed identification and from phytolith finding from the sediment. So as Emilie said, that multi-proxy data is very important to controlling bias that we found. Thank you.
That's right. It's a big puzzle. It's one big puzzle, archaeology, and we don't have all the pieces because archaeological records don't preserve that way. And then looking into archaeobotany, again, we don't have all the pieces. So it is putting together a range of narratives, and a range of, so we're talking a lot about multi-proxy here. So a range of analyses, and that means coming together. No one can be a specialist in 6, starch, phytoliths, pollen, diatoms, wood charcoal, carpology, parenchyma. Realistically, it's very important that we do work together and collaborate as archaeobotanists for sure. I think there's another one in the chat here.
Yeah. Oh no, and Alifah just disappeared. So might read out the question. It's more of a charcoal question, so I think Emilie is probably going to be the main one to answer, and hopefully Alifah will rejoin us briefly in a moment. So the next question is from Jamie, and thank you, Jamie, for your question. And they say that they've just done their undergrad at La Trobe and are looking to go on to do their master's thesis, which sounds wonderful. And I love that they said they've been looking at doing archaeological fire science for their thesis. So we can all be really grateful that you now have a whole word for that, Jamie. So that's wonderful. So I really loved reading your question. But getting to the question that Jamie's asking is that what's the best way to go about getting resources for desktop research as well as then getting samples of their own to analyze for their project. And I also really wanted to build on Jamie's question because I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to provide a little bit of information on the lines of, anyone who is keen to get into archaeobotany, either at the undergrad level or at sort of master's honors stage, like what should they be looking at doing in terms of, if someone is an undergrad archaeology student, like what subjects might be good for them to do, as well as then moving on to theses, like who are good supervisors other than obviously your wonderful selves, but like what universities might be good for them to go look at potentially going to, and those sorts of questions in the broader topic, as well as Jamie's specific question.
I'll start by answering Jamie's question, and maybe Idia can help me to answer the bigger question that Shimona just put up. Yes, welcome to the beautiful world of wood charcoal and anthracology. And of course, anthrax is a Greek word for charcoal and fire, right? So that's the one. And if you are interested in that and you want to start through a literature review kind of study, there is actually a lot of literature which is now available. So if you Google wood charcoal analysis, anthracology, Australia, Oceania, you're going to have a list of different papers, and then you have to, as I said to the students, just follow the reference trail, right? In each paper, you're going to have a number of references that you see coming back, and you have to follow them. The big names are Lucie Chabal, Rita Schil-Ibert, who is a Brazilian anthrachologist who's very important for the application of anthracology to tropical environments. Stéphanie Thiebaud, who I mentioned earlier. So yes, I think, with these type of keywords, you're going to be able to find a number of references that are going to be important in terms of telling you how the discipline work, so the protocols and the processes, the kind of questions that are being explored, and the areas where it's been applied, and the fact that in Australia, every time almost you start a project, you have to first start a reference collection yourself. So if you're looking at having a project on that for your master, I'm sorry I have to do that, but at the moment I'm actually the only person in the university setting who can actually teach and take someone, supervise someone in anthracology.
It's true.
Yeah. So and we've got, we now have people who actually have PhD in anthracology, but as I said, it's hard to find a job. So unfortunately, I'm still the only one in a university position who can do that. So I maybe encourage you to get in touch with me, and we can discuss more about how you can find proper training and mentoring, and then access samples. So basically, in terms of samples, it's not going to be hard to find because, as I said, everywhere humans before Homo sapiens, even before Homo sapiens, go, we make fire, right? It's actually the oldest domestication. It's not dogs or whatever, it's fire, okay?
We domesticated it.
So there's almost always going to be charcoal in archaeological sites. So like if you talk to any of your archaeology lecturer, they will have some charcoal samples somewhere. Now the question is it a good sample to study? That's another thing that you need to discuss with somebody who knows about wood charcoal. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll second that. Sampling is incredibly important, contextually speaking, especially if we're talking about here in Australia. Often our excavation methods are arbitrary units, otherwise known as spits, and that can be quite complex in terms of cross-cutting actual strata, actual stratigraphic units. So you have to sample very carefully. That goes across the board, for anything really, even lithics. If you've got two different strata, but the excavation unit cross-cuts it, then, it's pretty well archaeology 101 that. So I think the Shimona sort of other bit of the question where it was like, what would we suggest? It's funny because I had that as a question as well, like what advice would you give, an aspiring archaeobotanist, I'd say. I'll sort of field a bit of the undergrad. I mean, while you're doing your bachelor, I think it's really important. And I mean, this actually isn't speaking from experience. I didn't do any botany units, so I would recommend if you have the opportunity, that would be wildly helpful. There's nothing sort of offered in undergrad specific to archaeobotany. It'll come up in lab methods, usually in third year. I mean, it'll certainly come up throughout. But if I could suggest anything, and I know this isn't archaeobotany specific, but tailor your archaeology degree with anthropology units. Do as many anthropology units as you possibly can. It's incredibly important, not only that we understand archaeology, but we actually understand culture and humans and society. And then I think at any and all universities here in Australia specifically, any Indigenous units that you can get your hands on, absolutely do them all from first year to third year if you can. I think that realistically, if you've got a future working in Australia, the more you understand about First Nations cultural history and, Australia's cultural history at large, its connection, to New Guinea and, and that Pleistocene background is incredibly important. So earth sciences as well, geography, geology, they all sort of tailor in to it. But I think for me personally, my anthropology units were incredibly important on the back of doing all the archaeology units. Alifah, in Indonesia, what would you suggest in, you know, sort of a bachelor setting during your undergraduate studies? Is there any advice you would give to someone aspiring to become an archaeobotanist?
Yes, if someone want to be an archaeobotanist, maybe basically they must complete the academic graduate from archaeology or biology. But the most necessary thing, I think, they must continuously and focusedly to doing the research in this field, because I think that continuously research can reveal the new discover both in the subsistence, both in the theoretical or in the method. So if someone want to be an archaeobotany, the academically is important, but more important, they must increase their skill by doing research consistently and work together with another archaeobotany, and with the biology, with the environment to increase their skill and their intuition about this field. Yeah, and sorry about my signal. I was
No, that's okay.
hard rain in here, so I have a problem with the signal.
Not a problem.
No
Em,
worries
do
at
you have
all.
anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we should add also, so while you're thinking about all of that in your undergrad, and reading is actually also one of the, you know, best way to kind of explore what exists out there and who are the people that you might want to get in touch with. But then, so in Australia at the moment, and India can also help me with that, but UQ, the ANU, and UWA are the main university where you can go and speak with archaeobotanists. So at UQ, it's all Andy Fairbairn lab and work. At the ANU, there's no Anna Floren, who is teaching archaeobotany, macrobotanical remains. And there's a long tradition of archaeobotany at the ANU as well, including micro remains. And then at UWA, we're doing our best to not just do only wood charcoal. We'll get there. We'll get there. But yes, and then there are researchers who are moving around, like Lynn Lewallis, like Leslie Head, and a number of other people who were like really important in developing archaeobotany in Australia. And New Zealand also has a number of really good university with places where you can train in archaeobotany to apply in Oceania in general. And in the Philippines, I know there's a good training in archaeobotany as well.
Absolutely.
But then maybe I'll defer to India and Alifah for these other places to look into.
Well, I think you've covered most of them, if I'm honest. So, yeah, University of Philippines, I believe Jane Carlos is still there. I think there's a number of archaeobotanists that work from UP. And but it does what you've just said there about like Leslie Head, and you know, we shape shift because there isn't solid trajectory of, you know, an archaeobotanist position at at universities. They're rare if they exist at all. As archaeobotanists, we do tend to shapeshift, and so we got either put back just our straight up archaeology hat. You know, we're out there. We are actually out there. But I think you might raise a really important point about just research. You know, get to know your library, get to know your journals, get to know your resources. And those names, you know, like you were saying, I have them as well in carpology. They will keep coming, and you then realize, oh, this person is, you know, the law at that. So, you know, you end up bowing down and going, oh my goodness, you know, and then when you meet them, it's very, oh, wow, how exciting. So it's the usual, you know, it's sort of, I guess the usual suspects really. And it's about, you know, I guess it's, if anyone's interested in archaeobotany, you know, it's about doing your research first and sort of going, okay, where do I go? Who do I want to talk to? You know, we're all in academia. We all have emails. You know, none of us would shy away from an email of someone that's interested. So reach out. You know, we're just here. And I
Yeah, and it's
recognize we've severely gone over time.
are we?
Yes.
Are we?
So I was going to
Yes.
jump in very quickly. That's okay. I was going to jump in very quickly because we have one more question from Angus, who hopefully is still online and waiting
Still there.
patiently.
Sorry, Angus.
And their question is, how do we identify wood charcoal species? Is it mainly through reference collections, or are there other characteristics to tell us about them? And I thought I'd also add on to that of talking about both physical reference collections as well as potentially digital reference collections as well.
Yeah. Can I share my screen with my beautiful charcoal
Mm.
pictures again?
Of course.
So I have to move back to all of these things. How do we do that? Blah, 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 blah. Here we go. Okay. Yes, it's mainly through reference collection. In areas of the world where there's a long tradition already of doing wood charcoal, but it's going to be the same for other type of macro remains, like what India does. They actually have published, so it's going to be called Wood Atlas or Seed Atlas or these kind of things, where they have these kind of images, so pictures of the anatomical or morphological features according to each species, and then you compare that to your archaeological remain. But in Australia or in most of Southeast Asia and the Pacific, we still have to go and collect ourselves, which is actually one of the really best parts of the field, because that's when there is this very strong collaboration with traditional owners and communities, and that we can exchange knowledge about plants and what they mean. And it's just really fun to go around landscape with your little saw and collect things. And then you also have to char them, in my case, and then observe them under the microscope. But you can see on this image already, I hope, that they all look different, right? So it's like the face of people, like we're all humans, but we all have a nose, two eyes, and a mouth, but somehow it's different, the way that it's arranged and the colors and the characteristics, right? And it's the same with wood charcoal. So it's looking at specific anatomical features and how they are arranged, and comparing them with reference collection, and if any publication exists with that as well. And it's the same for the seeds, right? And the fruit remains.
Absolutely. Yeah, very, very similar tact there. And I think Kevin's right. You know, one of the most beautiful things about what we do is plant collection on country with Indigenous knowledge holders. It's really a special and connecting moment of time that in a lot of ways sort of folds time in so many ways. You know, you're experiencing the past in your present, but you're also usually there with kids as well. And, you know, so you're seeing a future as well unfolding, which is an incredible thing within archaeology, within the archaeological space. I don't have too much to add to that at all. So, and given we're now 10 minutes on, but I mean, this is what it takes as archaeobotanists. We could talk about this all day. So please, if people are interested, just get in touch. We're definitely here. And I'd really, but you know, before we all do sign off, is just thank Em and Alifah and Shimona for your technological capabilities.
Yes.
And to thank our guest speakers. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, good to see you again, Alifah. You're back.
And thank you, Emilie. I'm sorry,
It's
I have a
okay.
problem with the signal because the hard rain here suddenly very hard. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Well, I
Thank you.
guess we should wrap this up. Shall we wrap it, Shimona?
Yep. So I just wanted to add, thank you everyone so very much for coming along. To our panelists, I don't know if you guys want to quickly share your email addresses in the chat or anything like that to everyone. Make sure that you're sending it to everyone, not just to yourselves. But I think that would be a really wonderful opportunity so that people know where they can contact you if they still have further questions about archaeobotany. And to emphasize at all levels, I think both from the students but through to current archaeologists, that I think, one of the things that ARCAS is about is trying to increase collaboration across the disciplines within archaeology. And so, we're always happy to answer emails, both from people who want to get into archaeobotany, but also people who maybe want to collaborate with archaeobotany in some way. So just adding that at the end. And I hope everyone enjoyed the first ARCAS Conversations seminar.
Thank you.
And thanks again
Thank
to
you for
everyone.
organizing.
Hopefully not last. Thank you, everyone.
And,
Thanks,
and
Shimona.
have a great weekend and a happy Archaeology Week again too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Bye.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Thanks, Alifah. So nice to meet
Thank you,
you.
India.